Can you talk about spiritual practice and how it affects one's music?
Well, you have music. As you enter some understanding of it as a result of something you hear in society, that which is out of you, ordinarily, that's where it comes from. And so you're fascinated and intrigued by or attracted to the music, and you learn already to be kind of like in the external world. And so that's good, but that's not good. So to the degree that what you're doing is more part of what's outside of you than inside of you, I have to say, that's a big question mark. See, who can afford to just play from what's outside? See, and mirroring that so that, the outside accepts you. So you want to be accepted by the outside. See, no one I know care about is interested in that particularly. We all use the outside for educational purposes and basic culturing to get up to a certain level of conventional, let's say, successful interaction with other beings. And so it serves a purpose. It's a step. Hopefully it's a step towards the inside. You don't want to have to wait for a disaster to push you inside or to wake you up necessarily, because it might be too late and it might be too crushing for you. So the idea is to start the children with the understanding that the inside is just as important as the outside. See, but ordinarily in schools, that's not what they tell you to do. They don't tell you to play what you hear and what you feel, because they want you to play what they are prescribing as a developmental form that is supposed to be of ultimate purpose and ultimate service to you as you grow up and become more of a cog in the machinery of, let's say, conventional music for the most part, which is not bad. You can make it big that way. See, seduction is to make it big. See? And then, so what you're saying is making it big is more important than the inner. So it's about applause. It's applause-centered acceptance, for the most part, which is materialism, ego building, which is not bad. It's great. But then, at what cost? If there's no inner. And so that's the question. Even when you're practicing in the spiritual way, it doesn't mean that the inner music's going to come to you as such. It depends on how you practice, what you practice, and with whom you practice. In order to bring the inner current up, so that you have what is known in Ekankar, and in the Ruhani Satsang peeps, which is its source, the Shabd Yoga teachings that concern the spiritual sound current as such, which we're all part of, but we're not conscious of particularly. And you become extremely conscious of it when you're doing practices relative to sound current, chanting, which is a native practice, and participating in the sound that way. See? And then from there, if you start to have some kind of a good result, and being more or less aligned with the sound, and you're hearing it, but it's not necessarily distraction from the material world, but also giving you, let's say, some kind of revelation that is related to the source of the material world. And then you start to feel okay with your inner practice, and it doesn't in any way impede what your outer practice might be, whether that's being a studio musician or concert musician, classical musician or jazz musician. You're just coming from that place, which probably is ideal. So it's ideal. Yeah.
So could you call the inner and outer directions, let's say, parallel realities in one's musical development?
They could be seen as parallel realities, but they're really the same thing. One is the inner, that means deeper. And just because you're in the outer, in the superficial, doesn't mean you're not deeper. So they both coexist. It's a matter of what your intelligence is that helps you to understand and recognize where the two function together or differently. So it's intelligence. It's not about dogma. It's not about a formula, like zip a few lines out, and then that's what it is. No, there's no such thing of anything being like that. That's true, particularly in regards to the inner spiritual source and the creator, which is part of the infinite stream itself. So we're talking paradoxes and incomprehensibilities and these kinds of things that deal with the forces of the universe and the awareness of the universe as a cosmic, let's say, process the unconsciousness, consciousness, superconsciousness, subconsciousness maybe, functioning between the conscious and the deeper conscious or the unconsciousness, right? The infinite sort of like, who knows within, the divine consciousness.
So one is trying to learn, let's say, the rules and forms of outer music. Does that...
If the inner music is already active, then that's understood already. You're not going to, once the inner music is contacted, as it has been in my case since early life, then it doesn't matter what you play. Nothing's going to interfere with it. Then you play according to whatever you need to play. See? But once you're working from the inner, then it's not going to affect you in a certain way where it's going to take you out of the inner. The inner is the source. It's real. It's where the heart is. See? And so everything else would seem to be something else. Because the inner is not where the money is. So if you're the kind of person, a musician, who needs to go where the money is, then you're going to disregard, let's say, the inner to a certain degree to play from the outer, so to speak, to get that money, to get that moolah, see? And so that doesn't extinguish or defeat the function of the inner in your life. If that's what you have to do, then it's there for you to be still part of the inner, but working in a certain context where you're not functioning as a pure channel of the inner, but you're using, let's say, your conventional need to make money as part of what the inner needs to provide you with. So there's no real contradiction there.
So then, are there musicians who should, let's say, avoid the outer strictly to concentrate because they don't need to make a living from music? They need it for other reasons. So, are those like two separate worlds for some people?
They're not two separate worlds for anybody. But you can make it separate because that's the nature of your mind. To separate things, separate yourself, self-separative, say, consciousness, self-separative behavior, say, egoic behavior, separative egoic, limitational behavior, not seeing the whole, right, seeing the parts, and feeling identified with certain parts and not with other parts. Enlightenment or spiritual consciousness has to do with the whole as it is, and all the parts. Working with certain parts, not so much from preference, but because of karma or whatever, just knowing what it is, so it's not a preference, it's what you got, it's what you have. And then using what you have as let's say, the particular, from the understanding and wisdom of the whole, and then you have a whole other kind of art form. You have a more cosmic form of art, which is the way it should be. It shouldn't just be entertainment for just country and western, with limited chord structures. That's not music, that's just country and western, the version of music. Same with the folk, that's the version of music. Classical, that's the version of jazz, the version of music. And so we have to give a little bit of props to jazz, because in the jazz, at least you have the idea, well, okay, now you got to blow on it. You got to say something about it, just as it is in the Baptist church. There's certain churches that I've been a part of at different times say, okay, now what do you say about that? What do you got to say? Right? Speak. In other words, let it come through you. If you have anything that's going to come through you, if you're that open, see, for whatever it is to come through you relative to what's going on. So the jazz element gives you that opportunity. So to do it while you're playing structure, but not being limited to structure, which sounds like impossible for, so let's say, certain types of musicians, but that's just balance, that's just normal. So it's like saying, giving us a topic to talk about and then talking about it. So our nature is to be able to express and relate from personal experience relative to whatever the topic is. I haven't been there, but I've been here. Blah, blah, blah. You go on, blah, 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 blah. You want to be able to blah, blah with your acts in a sincere and humble manner and a creative manner in the same way. You speak. You want to be able to play as you speak. So then you're speaking through the instrument rather than playing programs based upon somebody's idea of what improvisation is. And it's never true. It's never real. You sound like everybody else. You reduce yourself to a Joe Schmo who's playing licks. That means you're playing nothing. And so it's to be taken lightly like that with respect. Say, now this person's playing nothing. great. He's playing great, nothing. See, and then this person's playing something. See, and it's, it's, let's say, mysterious, profound. We don't know what it is. You have to determine whether or not what you know what it is, because you've heard it before, is more important than what you know. You don't know what it is, and you've never heard it before and may never hear it again. See? That's the difference between the talented and then the creative, for real. See? Not just, compositionally hip and weird and whatever, intellectually, strategically this way and that way. No, that's basically, I guess you might say more mechanical. See? More mechanical. Presumed avant-garde, perhaps, or make-believe avant-garde. No, we're not talking about that. We're talking about, like, again, in the church, where, okay, you're on the spot now. What do you got? I'm not saying it's like that, or in the temple. So standing beyond yourself for a moment, and letting whatever your relationship is to the higher powers show itself, show its face, show its word. Inspiration, if you have any. So we're talking about this is also part of the process. And going back to the Shabd yogis, and it's all, or those who practice native practitioners, who are into the sound, not just words, concepts. See, touching base consciously with earth sounds, deeper than that. Accessing history that way, and mystery, through vibratory resonance. As the yogis do, as the monks do. They have words and they have meaning there too, but you don't need words and you don't have meaning, because if you have the mind, you can find out that way. It can inform you. The inner consciousness, the master within, can inform you if you're open enough to it, and it will. But you have to be open enough to what that is, fearlessly, with appreciation and gratitude, because it's the same as a Christian saying, "Oh, great Holy Spirit, please inspire me to say something." Same forces. Yeah. Oh Lord Almighty, God Almighty, whatever it is, whatever you are, whatever the it is or whatever the is, you would say, please, I'm your vessel right now. Please, be pleased to guide me and take me where you need to take me to the heights of possibility or whatever it is. We're talking about the wind, the spiritual wind, and asking for the spiritual wind to come to you. Sometimes you have to ask for it in literal terms. Say, I know thou art the wind, thou art the fire. And I am but a sail. I'm just a little pipsqueak rowboat in the great vast ocean. But I am at your mercy. Use me as I will. That can be very useful to some peeps. Come in.
Can you talk about the dynamic between a musician's inspiration and then their cooperation with the other musicians they're working with and their levels?
What's the question?
So,
are you talking about there being an inspired person, or somebody who's trying to be inspired, and then what that means to his band?
yes.
Who knows and who cares what it means to the band? We're not talking about a band getting it particularly, but if you have inspiration, let us say, and you write a piece that's inspired, then that's what you expect your band to play, and they do the best they can with it. Doesn't mean they're going to be inspired in any way, shape, or form, or whatever, because a musician's just into playing music. They don't care about the inspiration, they don't care about what happens beyond that. They want to play it to get paid to play it and get off the bandstand. Hopefully they'll enjoy it. So if you can play something enjoyable, whether it's inspired by you or transpired or expired by you, it doesn't matter. The cats just want to play it and make their money and say good night, sweetheart, see you next gig. That's it, it's just business.
But if one musician is bringing something more, that gets through whether the others aren't or not.
Again, who cares about that? That's not a real conversation at this point. Your truth, if it's coming from the inside, may reach somebody or not, but you can't be concerned about that. You got to be concerned about your truth, whatever that is. Your relationship to what it is, without thinking social, without thinking peeps all the time, without thinking, well, who's going to get it? Who cares about it? There's nobody to get it. You have to get it. And when you get it, you don't care if anybody else gets it. And that's one way to determine if you get it or not. If you're caring about other people because you didn't get it. You don't got it. See? So the idea is you want to make sure you get it, you got it, and then stay with that. Don't worry about who gets it or got it as such. And that's the difference between a confident musician and somebody that is insecure, self-conscious, and really like unstable, creatively unstable. A person who is secure, who knows that they got it and they're using it, is very stable in a manner of speaking. Musically, creatively, they say, no, I can do this, I'm going to do this. Boom, it gets done that way. No fear about that because it's real to them. But we say, ideally, it's real. Then you can have life changes make you unstable. But when it comes to the art, no, that's stability. You can be stable because that's when you know you're closest to what it is in you. You know, the force, the light, or whatever it is, the genius, the spirit, and you feel best with that.
So is that something that can be, let's say, brought to light at will? When you need it, it's there? Or do you...
If you got it, it's there all the time, for real. It's just what it is. The idea is to be able to be that. See, not just visit it and say, well, you know, on occasion I feel inspired and I feel something. No, that's there all the time when you're that open to it. When you make that the focus instead of all the other garbage and BS that you preoccupy yourself, then that might be the case. But as long as you're entertained by everything else but that, you got to expect this, what you're going to show up as playing is everything else but that. This is straight now. There isn't no rocket science here. It's straight now. Clear. Bell clear. Clear bell.
So for a musician like that, even the band is potentially a distraction, the audience is potentially a distraction.
No, you are the distraction. You're distracted by those things, not the band. Nobody's a distraction. You make that. So it's your mind that makes the distraction. Everything else is perfect for what it is. Right? The walls in the club, the lights in the club, the waitresses in the club, the go-go girls, if you got go-go girls, all of that is the waiters, whatever it is, the cooks. You know, that's perfectly what it is. If you make that more your business, I don't know if you should be hired by the management. So this guy is actually going to be mirroring what we're doing over here already, and then he thinks we're going to pay him for that? No, I don't think so. We want something else. They want real art. I'm saying not everybody wants real art. But the people that we're talking about in terms of the creative culture, want something real, something coming from the deeper, which is, I think, great because it's put on the artist to attain that. See? And they want to pay for that. See? And as long as it's not too out, right? Scare all the clientele away, and then it's okay. It could be acceptable in the establishment or whatever the venue is that you might be talking about. See? So it's a matter of levels then for art's sake, then it's a matter of understanding that various clubs have certain standards and then you got to meet those standards. Otherwise there's no way you're going to work there. So everything then is conformity to a degree, making sure what you're doing complies with or fits into whatever the requirements are, the standards or limits are of a particular establishment, and whether or not that works for you and works for them at the same time.
And so then, would you consciously change the music around or wait till, let's say, you're changing the interstate?
What? I'm not sure what you're talking about relative to who would have to change the music around. You have to either know who you're playing for, who you're working for or not. I mean, that should be already cleared before you even show up. So it's not about doing anything. You either have the goods or you don't have the goods. And they hire you because they know you have the goods for the club. Otherwise, no way. And of course, once you get in, I mean, you can pretend to get in that you're playing the soft, sweet stuff, and then you can blow the place out, but don't expect to come back.
Unless people
unless you did it in the best way possible, and beyond their expectations, they say, no, we need more of this. Because everyone is searching for that liberation, but not everybody thinks that they are. They don't know that they are in the same way until it happens, but it happens as a good thing. So that's the idea. That's what practice is about, being prepared to rise to the level of giving your heart's worth under certain conditions. Doesn't mean you have to be playing your brains out, doesn't mean you have to be playing crazy or any kind of avant-garde. You can be doing that in a ballad and just know what it is and do it. If you can do it on a ballad, you can be hired there because that's contained, but it's then contained fury. The idea is to have that kind of understanding of what it is.
So what is the mechanism or process? Many people, myself included, can distinguish between what seems real from a musician and what seems contrived, false, from memory.
And that's always relative, always relative. And all the things you're saying, it could be that, but who cares? You have to know what it is for you. If you notice in your conversation, it's always about peeps. You have to trim that down and then focus, because you're holding yourself back by being so concerned about other peeps that you care more about that than what you're doing. That doesn't make any sense. Just nonsense, BS. As an artist, on any scale, you have to know what it is, and you have to be with what it is you have to do to whatever degree you can call right, good, masterful, perfect, excellent, transcendent, and so on and so forth. You have to be true to that. Yeah. It's not about other peeps. Of course, you have to bring your work relative to other peeps. So there's a definite collaborative sort of environment for it, but that's relative to what? Necessity, circumstance, who hires you, and so on. You know, what the band is doing, what the concept is, all of that is relative and it's like no big deal. You just need to know you. That's it. You don't need to get beyond that in the beginning anyway. Getting to know you as the source of what it is you need to do. As an artist, that means it's you and the inner. See, the light, the flame, whatever you want to call it, as it's called today, the inner flame, right? That's what you need to embrace, see, and be at peace with, see, whatever that means to you. No one else, there's nothing else analytically to say about it. There are only certain symbolic, poetic terminologies that we can use to get your intelligence to get it and say, no, I got that. You didn't even have to finish the sentence. I got that, I want that, I need to be that, like tonight. Before the sun sets, I need to be that.
And so it would seem, for a musician who wants to develop from the inner, that the focus needs to get away from music to some degree and get to the inner. And
well, we're not going to go that far. If you're a musician, you never escape from music. If you're a musician. So it's not about escaping from music. It's about understanding what its function is in your life and what your function is as a musician. That's what you need to understand better. See? So it's not about, again, the outside and the outer world. It's all about you with you. The you. You as you. See, beyond your self-programming and your family blood karma and your social karma and your educational karma and your professional karma, there's an inner reality. You go to sleep with it every night, but it doesn't mean you know what it is. It doesn't mean you're at peace with it. See, your conscience. And beyond that, so your truth, so your heart, let's say. So the idea is, yeah, you got to get deep, so you have to be around deep people to hear this. You hear it from deep people. You're not going to hear this from academics in the same way. See? In other words, you hear it for the first time when it's coming from a true being. It's a true artist. It's like hearing it for the very first time. Even though it's about the same things everybody talks about. It's like starting over again. Hopefully getting it right, see? Because you're too easily distracted by the next thing that shows up, the next advertisement that comes up, the next show that's coming around your area, and so on and so on. You're distracted, so you don't want to be an artist. If you're so easily distracted by that, you might want to not give up your day gig. See? Hold that day gig. Hold that day gig. Being playful, good.
so I'm trying to make a distinction between music and sound at this point, because a lot of what you deal with...
Chanting is sound. Chanting is working with sound. Sound is vibration. We're not talking about pitches. That's a whole different thing. Pitches are important too. Pitches, some keys are fixed and are better left as they are, and that may be true. Certain chords are also fixed for the effect, that are also part of what you get from a piece of music. So there are structures, there are, let's say, conditions. We could say there are melodic, rhythmic, harmonic conditions that put together properly make a beautiful composition work the way it works. So that means it brings peace, brings beauty to you, brings enchantment, brings healing, brings sorrow to you, sadness when you need to get in touch with that, the blues. all of this is part of a conscious artistic expression, which, you know, is a beautiful thing. But then we have to go to sound. That's in the musical domain. See? So sound has to do with what you're feeling, not what you're playing. Who you are as a center of feeling, beyond feeling. We say feeling good, but not just good relative to bad. I mean real good relative to handling good and bad. That's what's real good. See, this player plays real good. I mean, he's playing everything. And you do it the same way. One piece to the next piece, like bam, 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 bam.
And is that purely a result of being in the presence of certain vibrations that sounds
Well,
great?
you have to get down to the vibrations. You have to get down to the inner feelings. You have to slow down to get to that. See? And maybe it's not for anyone. Maybe it's for a few peeps. See, who understand, let's say, where music's coming from, which is silence. So if you listen for a second, you say, there's no music here, but I'm going to make music. I'm going to fill this room up with sound. And then it's over. Everything goes back to silence. But no one's willing to respect silence enough to be silent.
So does your music, is that an aspiration for it to contain silence? Or
I don't say it's an aspiration. I don't say it's that at all. You're saying that. It just is. See, once you have merged with the silence, let's say, hypothetically, who knows? That's really what it is. Who knows? It's not, well, this for that particularly, or this creates that necessarily. It's good to have some logic. But no, we're talking about the mysteries. See? We can say he or she who is sound plays the truth of music. What form that is? Who cares? I used to tell the students back in the day, they say, if you can hear the symphony in one note, then we can sit and we can talk. If you can't, then we don't have anything to talk about. Now, a person I know who would talk that way, it's like Pharaoh would say, you hear one note, you hear a symphony in it. And that's because there's so much in it. You know, we're not just talking about harmonic series, we're talking about, you know, more complex polyharmonic series. Hearing that. And not only that, the intelligence can go beyond that even, so beyond what you hear, beyond the pitch and beyond the appearances of sound, frequencies, and hear thought, and hear mind, hear karma, hear time, past, present, future. Who can hear like that?
are the effects of certain vibrations or frequencies, let's say, predetermined, or could they have very different effects on
Relative. Everything is relative. Period. Relative to whom, relative to what. And sometimes relative to when. Next.
And so if we're dealing with sound, how do we deepen the vibration of the sound we're creating? Is it by intent? Is it by hearing? Is it by...
It's always by hearing. So you don't do it. If you have the ears for it, as they say in music, if you have the ears, you hear it. If you don't have the ear for it, you can't hear it. Same with a higher wisdom. If you don't have the mind for it, you can't perceive it, you can't recognize it. So it's like, you may as well move on to something else. Whether it's astrophysics or super astrophysics. Same. Quantum, super quantum theories, and so on. So like really hearing into silence. Right? There's nothing to say, there's nothing to write anymore. There's nothing to hear, so to speak. So then you're involving yourself in your core reality is mystery. Who? Question mark. That'll do it for now.